Okay, hear me out. I don't hate it. X-Men Origins Wolverine was released in 2009, directed by Gavin Hood, starring Hugh Jackman, Liev Schreiber, Kevin Durand, Danny Huston, Taylor Kitsch, and Ryan Reynolds. And I get it, this movie is not very good, but I still think that there's some stuff to like here. So let's go ahead and jump into this review, starting off with the good. And first and foremost, obviously, Hugh Jackman is fantastic as Wolverine. I love seeing his backstory. For the most part, I thought that his performance really worked here, and you're never going to see me talk bad about his portrayal of Wolverine. So that's what we got going for it already. And next up, you got Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. I wasn't a huge fan of Tyler Mane's portrayal in the first X-Men. Liev Schreiber is so damn good as Sabretooth. I loved how menacing and delightfully evil he was. I loved his chemistry with Hugh Jackman, the brotherly bond that they share. Even though they pretty much hate each other in this movie, I thought that they played off each other very, very well. Then you got Danny Huston in this movie as Stryker. Brian Cox played him in X2, and I think that Danny Huston was just as great as Brian Cox, if not even a little bit better. He's obviously having a blast playing this evil, despicable character, and I loved him. He was great in the role. Then you got Kevin Durand as Blob. Fun performance. I love Kevin Durand. He's a very underrated actor. And I don't know how good of a portrayal of the character this was. Blob has always been one of my least favorite X-Men characters, so I never really paid attention to him. But I thought that Kevin Durand was having a blast here, and I loved his performance. So, yeah, fun scene with him when he was actually the Blob near the middle of the second act. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I didn't even think Taylor Kitsch was that bad as Gambit. Obviously, he's not exactly capturing the spirit of Gambit as the character, but Taylor Kitsch did what he could with a pretty bad script and turned in a solid performance, in my opinion. I really liked him as Gambit. Kind of glad they never really went the franchise route with him, though. But it was fun to see him in the role regardless. And Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson in the first act of this movie was good. He captured the smartass that Wade Wilson is in the comics. And I will get to the third act Deadpool later. But I loved him for the most part in the first act. He had the smartass comments and the rivalry between him and Logan. Fun to see. Not so fun later on in the movie, but that's a different story. Outside the acting, you get some fun action sequences, specifically the scene where Logan gets his metal claws. You get a really great scene where he escapes from the Weapon X lab. Fun scene. The scene in New Orleans where he fights Sabretooth, where Gambit comes in. Fun to see that as well. And the boxing scene where he has to box with Blob to get some information. That's a fun scene as well. There's a lot of fun scenes in this movie. Even the third act fight, it was fun, even though what happened with Deadpool in that scene was a war crime, which I will talk about. But it was still a fun scene, especially seeing him and Sabretooth team up with each other to fight Deadpool. I don't even want to call it Deadpool, but regardless, fun scene seeing them together. And you get some pretty good, I hesitate to say good, but some good dialogue here. And the soundtrack is obviously great as always. Now, all that said, there is a lot that wasn't very good about this movie. So let's go ahead on to the bad. And like I said, there's a lot that did not work in this movie. First of all, I'm going to get it right out in the open. The worst thing about this movie was obviously the handling of Deadpool in the third act. This was a war crime on all levels. This is not Deadpool. They sewed his mouth shut. It's so bad that Ryan Reynolds is just constantly making jokes about it in the Deadpool movies. Apparently Ryan Reynolds didn't even want to go this route with Deadpool, but they told him, listen, you play Deadpool like this in this movie, or we're going to get someone else. And Ryan Reynolds didn't want to give up the role, so he went with it. And his patience paid off. We did get Deadpool in 2016. So, not even 7 years after this movie, we finally got a proper Deadpool, but still, the handling of Deadpool in this movie is a war crime on all levels. There's a lot of bad CGI in this movie as well. I don't know what they were doing with the CGI budget, but it went out the window, and they did it on a Windows browser. That's what it really felt like. And outside of the characters I mentioned in the good, just about every other character in this movie just felt mishandled. I didn't like how they handled Silver Fox. Then again, not exactly a character I really cared much about in the comics. Wraith, played by Will.i.am, not a very good character either, though Will.i.am was very much miscast in that role. And don't even get me started on Emma Frost. And I'll talk a little bit more about Emma Frost in the next review. But didn't really care for that. Didn't care for Cyclops having a cameo. And the weird CGI facelift they gave Patrick Stewart in the third act. It's whatever. But yeah, a lot of characters were mishandled here. And there's even some action scenes that are just not exciting. I kind of wanted this movie to be the opening credits. That was fantastic. But then they went basic comic book movie route. The story's not super great. I wanted to see more of Wolverine's actual origins, and we didn't exactly get that. But regardless, on to the final thoughts. I don't absolutely hate this movie. It's not the war crime atrocity that everybody says it is. Outside of the portrayal of Deadpool, it's just not the atrocity people claim it is, in my opinion. I know a lot of other people are going to have very different opinions than me on that. But X-Men Origins Wolverine is a fun time for me. I have fun watching it, and I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. So that was my thoughts on X-Men Origins Wolverine. What did you think about this movie if you have seen it? As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.